Hi folks, this is Florida Man, bringing you an interview with Play Diplomacy's top-ranked player and one of the strongest diplomacy players I have ever met, Conq, or Jordan. Without further ado, please enjoy. Hello Conq, or Jordan. Most people online will probably know you better as Conq.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, I feel like you're sort of the living embodiment of the idea that there's always somebody better. So I think there's probably a lot of wisdom you can share for my audience.
The living embodiment. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I am humbled so often playing diplomacy, and I feel like recently I've been in particularly playing a lot of people who are better. So I get that, and that's a way to learn. I mean, I'm in a game right now where I'm being completely humbled. So hopefully I'll be just a little bit better next time.
I guess that happens even to the best of us. Well, part of why I decided to ask you to interview, as you can probably guess, is that you are the top-ranked player on playdiplomacy.com, where I usually play my diplomacy, in addition to being one of the great picnic sack racers of our time.
It's hard earned.
You've been on the site for about as long as I have, it looks like. So I'm curious, how did you get into diplomacy?
Yeah, okay, so I got in, it starts in tragedy, but ends with fun. So I had a catastrophic injury. I locked myself out of my apartment. I tried to scale the bricks on the side of the building to get in. Didn't go as planned. Plunged into the cement below. Compound fractures in both my wrists and broke several bones in my face. So that's a way of saying I was confined to my parents' basement for a bit for some recovery, and couldn't do much. And my brother introduced me to online diplomacy as a way of surviving and sort of passing the time. So I started, playing a couple of games that way, typing pretty slow, sometimes with my feet, and just really took to it, enjoyed the competitive aspect. Wow. Started to get to know some folks who play, and really, I can't stay away now. I have just a ton of friends who play, and I really enjoy it. So that's how it all got started.
I must say that's quite the origin story. It feels very,
Yeah, kind of a superhero sort of origin story. Well, they did put titanium plates in both of my wrists, so I don't know that has helped me in a game yet, but I feel like just having it there makes me more confident. So that could be part of it. That could be part of it.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry to hear that you injured yourself in that way. But
no, it's all worked out. It's all worked out.
I guess now your wrists are pretty much unbreakable.
That's right. I was the pride and joy of my physical therapy clinic, pronation, supination, the whole thing. So feel like I'm just about up to full strength.
Well done. And congratulations on your recovery.
Thanks. It's been several years now, but I appreciate that.
I'm glad you made it through that. One of the things that I think is kind of unavoidable if one looks at your record as a player on Play Diplomacy is that you have about a 54% solo rate in games that you play, and a little over 25% draw rate, which means you win more than half the games you play, and you lose only about 1 in 5. So I think there's no there's no unflattering way to ask this. How are you so good?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do have a good record. I'd say my solo rates tick down a little, so it hasn't really settled there. It may be dropping some more, but I have a good record. Why? I mean, thought about this a little bit. I think the first kind of threshold advantage is that I care a lot about it, and I'm going to work hard for it. So that's not true. I mean, it's online diplomacy, right? It's a casual hobby for me, certainly, but even more casual for most people who will log on to the site. So I embarrassingly care a lot about it. I am not going to be outworked by anybody. I usually, play one or two games at a time with some breaks. And when I'm in a game, I'm trying to win. So I think just the amount of effort I put in is annoying for some, but I'm never disadvantaged by being outworked, I guess, is the embarrassing truth to that question. Beyond that, I mean, I've had pretty good success finding an ally, and I think one thing that I kind of learned pretty early on is the game has. I'm a fan of Survivor, so that's all about being likable and making everybody else in the tribe feel like their game is advantaged by having you in it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a focus of mine is making people feel, and sometimes it's actually true, that their game is advantaged by having me in it. Whatever that means, if we get along well, it's more fun, we're, having good dialogue that way. If it's because, say I'm one power like France, and I love working with England, and I have, lots of past games where we always do well together, and it's making that argument and explaining why for somebody else having you around is good. Or sometimes it's even kind of somebody across the board. So I remember one of the games that you and I played online was shortly after we played together in the diplomacy Tempest in a Teapot. And you and Big Gun were next to me, and you attacked me. Unbelievable that you do that, but you did. And so for me, and I was in trouble. I was France, you were England and Germany, and I was under fire, and it was going to be a short game. So the key for me there was to reach out across the board and explain why it was in everybody's, disinterest to have England and Germany get off to a huge start, kill off France, and then turn their attention elsewhere. And so almost any time you're kind of under attack, there's somebody on the board who that's going to hurt. And so it's taking the time and putting in the effort to make that argument to get some help. So I guess, that's something that I've kind of focused on and has helped me. So I guess that's the best answer I have. There's more than a little luck in connection with those rankings, I'll say. But those are the things I'm kind of focused on.
Interesting points. I hear some humility there. I think there's very little of the element of luck in diplomacy. There is some there with assignment of countries to different people and which players you get in your games. But, I think what I find really impressive is when someone is so persuasive and actually can talk people into helping them to the point that where, as a France besieged by an England and a Germany, you not only make a complete comeback, but I believe you soloed that game as well.
Absolutely. That's right.
And
that's why I brought it up. That's the only games I bring up are games that turn out right.
Well, both of your games with me turned out right because you soloed twice.
That's why I agreed to the interview. Plenty to talk about. I'd love to talk about it.
You knew I wouldn't be able to bring up any losses. Speaking of which, when we met at the 2018 WDC/Tempest in a Teapot tournament, you not only beat me, an impressive enough achievement in itself, but you also wound up playing on the top board. So you're clearly not just very good at online, your skills transfer to in person. And I was wondering, I guess, what are some key reasons you think you're good at both, and what are some key differences between the skills necessary for the two different formats?
Sure. So I would say the verdict's still out about whether I'm good at both. That's the only tournament I've been to, and I was completely humbled on the final board. I was joyous to make it there, but I think I was the first one knocked out. It wasn't pretty. So let's wait till I go to maybe tournament number 2 before we get out the anointing oil. But I'm happy to talk about kind of both. So I think, in my limited experience, that so many of the skills translate, and that someone who's really good at one will be good at the other. I mean, just tactically, big picture, strategically, and even relating to the other people, all those things translate, I think, to both. So if somebody is really proficient at one and is considering the other, the skills are going to translate. Now, that said, there are like some definite hurdles and different elements that you have to get familiar with before it's easy. So if you play a lot online, you have plenty of time to stare at a board, think about it. You can talk to people simultaneously. So it's a different sort of way to play, and you just have to get used to quick deadlines. You have to get used to taking advantage of kind of looking around the room to see who's talking. You have to get used to if somebody, you want to make a point to them and you don't want them to talk to the guy over there or the girl over there, to kind of linger with them a little bit until the person over there there are elements that you get familiar with and that you can get better at. But that just takes time. You have some people who play a lot online and haven't had a chance to get familiar with the face-to-face game, or vice versa. And I think if you're good at one, if you have a chance to get familiar with the other, you're going to be really good at that too. That's my sense of it.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And to circle back to that top board experience you had, you played on the top board. I know you're talking about how you were humbled. We shouldn't get out the anointing oils, but you were playing against at least a couple of previous world champions of diplomacy. So I wanted to ask you, while I have the chance to play with somebody who played with those people, what are some differences between play at that level and the average game?
Yeah. So I'm going to broaden my sort of pool of games to draw from on this, because that was such an embarrassment. So I played on a few kind of top boards, and I'm going to include online tournaments in that too, because there are really outstanding online players that end up on some of these top boards too. And my general track record is to be really, really good at making top boards and then just get completely blown out when I get there. So this is a work in progress for me, and I'm trying to learn how to work in that environment. But the biggest difference that I am seeing is I am used to, in a kind of standard online game or a qualifier, to be able to find a really close ally, often a neighbor, but not always, but somebody who I basically share everything with. I share my moves with. I'm transparent. I know their moves. We're talking about it together. We might even talk about what we're saying to other people and kind of coordinating our diplomacy. And that's how I'm most comfortable playing. And that's how I've had in my games that have been most successful. I've always had that. And I'm always looking for that in the beginning. On top boards, certainly at the World Diplomacy Championship, and also at a lot of online top boards. It's usually time limited. Everybody, it's tense. Everybody is very, very capable. And I have found it is a lot harder to find an ally and work that way with somebody. People are more cagey. When I tell them all my moves and expect them to tell me theirs, a lot of times they just take advantage. And it's a different kind of game where everybody's keeping their cards close and sort of advancing a dot here and advancing a dot here and then backing off. And so in all the, I played a few kind of online top boards. I played the one face-to-face, and it's always been that way. And it seems like I always get burned because I I am sort of giving everything to somebody and expecting to create that partnership that will get us somewhere, and I lose. So I have seen that as a really pervasive element, different from top level play, from lower level play, and that could just be my experience, but it's been pretty consistent across a few games.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I think I've noticed similar stuff when I'm playing with higher ranked people on Play Diplomacy.
Yeah. So, for example, we played together in one of the qualifiers in the World Diplomacy Championship, and you were Turkey and I was Russia. And in that game, I had a really tight alliance with Italy, which just right out of the gate, for some reason, we hit it off. We both kind of liked that alliance, and we completely collaborated on everything. Really right up until the end, when some of the players on the West really kind of threw the game to me. And it, I was happy to take it, but I had gotten there based on this really tight alliance, and trying to replicate that experience on a top board, I've just never been able to do that. And I think part of that is kind of the high quality, but I don't know, it feels a little more zero-sum game when you're just looking for one winner on a board of 7. So
yeah, I think I see what you mean. Interesting. And there is something I feel like very basic about what you're talking about, because you're basically just talking about alliance play, building what people online will call alliance play, building a strong alliance, using it to try and take over the world. And
exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely very important for your early to mid-game survival. And I am curious though, because you don't just survive your games. You tend to solo a lot, and so I'm wondering, beyond this, very important strategic tip, what's your secret sauce for solos?
Yeah, how do you turn that into 18 centers? There's no secret sauce, certainly, and it's hard to answer kind of in general, because every game's so different. I think the answer is timing. I think it's both timing and leverage. So you're in an alliance with somebody, you've been working together all game. As you start to kind of turn the corner to, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 centers, kind of in there, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later, negotiation tends to get a little more serious. So, you're figuring out what you're building and what your defenses are, and you're telling each other how sincere you are, and, sticking together. But both sides are kind of trying to both defend getting stabbed for a solo and seeing where they might have an opportunity. So it's complicated figuring out on what turns you have kind of leverage to ask for something where they really can't say no, what turns you have to give in a little, and when to kind of go for it. And there's no secret sauce, because it's different in every case. It depends on where the pieces are. I think it just takes a lot of experience to kind of puzzle that out, but it's a really tricky question. It's not just kind of when do I go for it, but it's when do I ask for a no build or for a fleet build, or there's this tension that sort of moves along, and you're always pushing a little bit to give yourself that leverage. And sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. I think generally I'm on the more patient side. I tend to have more success when I kind of push it a little further if everybody else on the board is thinking, go, and I tend to be patient, but I think I'm able to do that. It's not just about waiting, but it's about kind of negotiating those points of leverage to make sure you kind of always have a better chance, and you're not making yourself so vulnerable and such an attractive target that it makes sense for anybody else to attack you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very, I think that's very useful. I mean, like, obviously it's kind of something that will be different for each player, each game. But I think that's something a lot of people will have to bear in mind if they want to up their chances and numbers of solos.
It's not a secret sauce, but it's the things that I think about anyway.
Yeah. I think that's probably how a lot of top players are thinking about things. So, anything in particular you were thinking you might like to share with the audience about your experience in diplomacy, or other tips you might want to give them?
Sure. Well, first, for folks watching this interview of a random online guy on YouTube or wherever you get your videos of random online guys, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to you, Florida Man Douglas, for taking the time to do this. I love the hobby. I find it super interesting. I really enjoy getting to know the people I've gotten to know in the hobby, and I really appreciate folks kind of taking the time to publicize it a little more, dig into it a little more, or just watch random internet guys a little bit more to show the interest. So I think that's awesome, and I'm in favor of that. I think the hobby needs to be expanded and needs to be as welcoming as possible. So that's awesome. In terms of other sort of secrets to share, I don't want to share any secrets because I intend to keep on playing, and I don't want to tell anybody else the complicated algorithms going on in my head when I'm figuring out how to get ahead. But I think play diplomacy is a great place to play. That's where I started, and I think the community is awesome there. I've also been playing a lot lately on the Nexus server on Discord, where they have these seasons, maybe 2 per year, with some qualifiers and a final board. That's a lot of fun. And I think webdiplomacy.net, I think, is another great place to play. And they have some great tournaments there, including the World Cup, which is starting in the next couple of weeks or so. So there's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of diplomacy to play, and I'm glad people are taking enough interest to watch a video like this one.
Thank you, Conq/Jordan. I hope you enjoyed this diplomacy interview. If you liked it, you know what to do. And please comment if you have ideas for future interview topics, subjects that would be better expressed if I discussed them with someone else rather than just talking about them myself. Until next time, Florida Man out.